Logan Harris was the kind of detective the Boston police turned to when cases became too complex or dangerous. That morning, the silence in your office was broken by the high-pitched sound of the telephone. When he answered, the air was charged with the gravity of a whispered threat from a stranger. "You have exactly 72 hours to find out what I did, or someone you love dies." Logan, used to dealing with tense situations, felt a chill run down his spine. The call ended abruptly, leaving him with the sound of his own breathing and the hum of the deadline. Logan's adrenaline began to rise as he pondered the enigmatic voice. Who would be capable of making such a direct and personal threat? He mentally reviewed his recent cases, trying to identify any dissatisfied clients or vengeful criminals who might be behind this. The detective knew that every second counted and that any hesitation could be costly. His thoughts were interrupted by the echo of the ominous phrase reverberating in his mind, forcing him to focus not only on saving a life, but possibly on solving a heinous crime. With urgency knocking on the door, Logan began his investigation in the middle of the night. He combed through old files, looking for connections or clues that might have previously been overlooked. Each file brought back memories of faces and cases, some resolved, others still open like wounds. The detective knew the caller knew his weakness and was playing a dangerous game. The pressure mounted as the clock ticked down, and Logan felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders, knowing the outcome of this investigation could be devastating. Determined, Logan decided to double-check all his sources of information. He contacted informants, searched criminal databases, and analyzed call records for any anomalies. Each clue seemed to lead to a dead end, increasing his frustration and despair. However, his experience as a detective told him that the answer was there, hidden in the shadows, waiting to be discovered. The memory of the threat kept his resolve firm, propelling him through exhaustion and skepticism. As the hours turned to minutes, the tension in his office was palpable. Logan reviewed his notes, looking for inconsistencies or details that had gone unnoticed. He knew that every detail could be the key to unraveling the mystery and saving the life of someone he loved. As the deadline approached, he realized this could be one of his most challenging investigations. The darkness of the night seemed to close around him, but his mind remained illuminated by the flame of determination and the duty to protect, whatever the cost. At dawn, while Boston was still waking up, Logan Harris found a sealed envelope on his door without any mark or return address to indicate its origin. When he opened it, the contents revealed themselves to be macabre, photos of a mutilated body, taken in a motel room with grotesque details that sent a chill down his spine. Without hesitation, Logan grabbed his coat and headed to the location indicated in the photos, a seedy motel on the outskirts of town, known for its shady clientele and unscrupulous events. The motel room was sealed by police, but Logan used his private detective badge to gain access. Inside, the iron smell of blood was still present in the air. On the wall, written in the victim's blood, was the message, "Not the first, won't be the last." The scene was a theater of horror, meticulously arranged to instill fear and confusion. The brutally disfigured body had no fingerprints, the teeth had been meticulously pulled out, and the unrecognizable face made identification a tortuous challenge. Logan began documenting every detail of the room with his camera, knowing that any detail could be the key to unlocking the killer's identity. The way the body was arranged, the choice of location, the message on the wall, everything seemed to be part of a complex psychological game. Logan felt like a pawn on a macabre chessboard, each move calculated to test his limits and investigative skills. The pressure of solving the case increased, as did the feeling of being constantly watched. Back in his office, Logan dove into old case records, looking for patterns or similar crimes that might be connected. Each past file he turned over brought more questions than answers, but he knew the solution was there, hidden between the lines of forgotten or neglected investigations. As he reviewed the data, a theory began to form in his mind. Perhaps the killer was recreating crimes from the past or carrying out a series of murders with a still hidden purpose. Exhaustion was knocking on the door, but Logan resisted, fueled by adrenaline and the desire for justice. He knew he was in a race against time and that every second lost could mean the difference between life and death for the next victim. The images of the photos never left his mind, each one an ominous reminder that the game was far from over. With the determination of someone with a lot to lose, Logan was ready to challenge the shadows and unearth truths buried in blood and suffering. As Logan Harris deepened his investigation, the traces left behind by the mysterious antagonist began to take on a terribly personal character. Among the items sent anonymously to his office, he found a wedding ring that exactly replicated his late wife's. The discovery left Logan stunned, his hands shaking as he held the ring, reliving the pain of a past that he fought daily to keep under control. That cruel gesture wasn't just a reminder of his loss, it was a clear message that the killer had not only studied him deeply, but was also willing to use his most painful memories against him. Amid the papers and photographs that covered Logan's desk, a recording played a voice he hadn't heard in years, that of his son, who had disappeared under mysterious circumstances. "Daddy, find me," said the childish voice, clear and piercing through the static. The impact of those words hit Logan with the force of a punch, disorienting him between professional duty and the emotional turmoil these clues evoked. It was clear that the killer was manipulating not only the circumstances of the crime, but also the most sensitive strings of Logan's psyche, turning the investigation into an emotional ordeal. Consumed by the need to understand how his most closely guarded personal information had been discovered, Logan began to question all of his recent interactions. Every client, every unsolved case, every face on the streets became a suspect. The investigation turned into a lonely and dark journey where trusting anyone became increasingly difficult. Paranoia set in, causing Logan to see potential threats in every shadow, every lingering glance. This isolation only served to intensify the pressure, making time seem to run even faster. Determined not to let himself be broken, Logan intensified his search for answers, delving into old case files and police records. With each discovery, the complexity of the puzzle increased, and with it, the certainty that he was facing an adversary who knew not only the details of his professional life, but also the depths of his broken heart. This realization brought bitter clarity. He was playing a game whose rules were dictated by a vengeful ghost from his own past. The sleepless nights and days consumed by obsession began to take their toll. Logan found himself confronting not only the Machiavellian mind of a criminal, but also the specters of his own failures and regrets. The investigation revealed a dark mirror, reflecting the duality of his journey, the search for justice for the victims and personal redemption. With each clue leading down a darker, more intimate path, Logan realized that unraveling this mystery would require not only his skill and determination, but also a confrontation with the shadows he himself had created. Logan's heart pounded as he knelt in the damp, silent alley, surrounded by the smell of wet trash and old concrete. In his hands, he held a dirty and torn teddy bear left anonymously in his car hours before. With trembling fingers, he ripped open the stitching and removed a small video device hidden inside the toy. Upon pressing the play button, the screen glowed in the darkness, revealing disturbing scenes. A masked man with a distorted voice and invisible gaze appeared brutally torturing someone tied to a chair. Even with his face deformed by suffering, Logan recognized the victim immediately. James Porter, his former partner, reported missing 2 years ago. The sight of James being torn apart by physical and emotional pain was like a blade piercing Logan's consciousness. The masked man slowly leaned towards the camera and with cruel calm whispered, "Take a good look. He was your partner." This wasn't just a visual attack, it was a sentence. The video progressed and showed James, between moans and screams, accusing Logan of having been bribed to cover up a crime. The truth that Logan had tried so hard to bury now emerged with full force, transforming every second of the recording into a merciless mirror of his deepest sins. Nothing there was by chance. Everything had been meticulously planned. Confused, devastated, and paralyzed by guilt, Logan felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath his feet. Seeing James in that state touched something far beyond logic or duty. It touched his wounded humanity, his accumulated regrets. He understood, with cruel clarity, that the masked man didn't just want justice. He wanted to see him fall apart inside. Every word James spoke echoed like a judgment. Not at the hands of the law, but in the court of his own conscience. Logan could no longer hide behind the facade of an infallible detective. He was, in fact, part of the origin of that nightmare. Even emotionally torn, Logan knew there was no time for hesitation. He turned off the video, took a deep breath, and allowed himself just a second of silence before standing up. This wasn't just a search for a criminal, it was his chance at redemption. Determined to right the wrongs of the past and perhaps save James before it was too late, he began to gather information, retrace steps, look for tracks he had previously ignored. Guilt burned his chest, but it was also the fuel that pushed him forward. He wouldn't let this chapter end with more blood on his hands. Darkness deepened over the city of Boston as Logan crossed empty streets and forgotten alleys, following clues as if each one connected him not only to the present, but to all the versions of himself he would like to erase. At each stop, I confronted more memories, more buried truths. The journey became a descent into personal hell where the ghosts of the past awaited him with open arms. But he continued, obstinately. It wasn't just the masked face he had to face. It was his own reflection distorted by time, mistakes, and pain. And at the end of that trail, he knew, the final judgment awaited him. The clock relentlessly marked the passage of time, each tick resounding like a hammer in Logan Harris's ears. Feeling the crushing weight of his own past choices, he decided to take drastic action. Armed with grim determination, he broke into the digital records of the city's psychiatric hospital, a dark place that many avoided even mentioning. He was searching for a specific name that he believed would be the key to unlocking the identity of the killer who tormented him, Connor Hale, a man whose life Logan had inadvertently destroyed years ago by falsifying evidence that led to his wrongful conviction. Hospital records were a maze of confidential information and complex medical histories. Logan, using his skills not only as a detective but also breaking into areas that were technically off-limits to him, finally found Connor Hale's file. The notes detailed Connor's growing obsession with Logan, fueled by years of resentment built up in the cold walls of the mental institution. Everything indicated that Connor could be the mastermind behind the macabre events that Logan faced, a twisted game of revenge and psychological manipulation. Armed with this new information, Logan headed to the psychiatric hospital, an imposing building that exuded desolation. When he arrived at the cell that supposedly housed Connor, he found the door strangely unlocked. Heart pounding, Logan entered, only to discover that the cell was empty. save for a single note left prominently in the center of the small table. "I was never here. I'm the voice inside your head." The words hit Logan with the force of a storm, throwing him into a whirlwind of doubts and dark revelations. The impact of this discovery was devastating. Logan realized he had been manipulated into believing in the physical existence of a man who, perhaps, had never left the depths of his troubled mind. The reality that Connor Hale could be a projection of his own guilt and paranoia left him paralyzed. Feeling betrayed by his own psyche, Logan began to question everything he believed he knew about the case and himself. The line between reality and illusion has become dangerously blurred, with Logan trapped at the center of a psychological maze that he himself had helped to construct. This revelation forced Logan to reconsider his approach. He desperately needed to unravel the layers of deception he had woven, both in his investigation and in his personal life. With time quickly running out, Logan was determined to face the depths of his mind, to finally free himself from the chains of his own lies. As the search for the truth continued, Logan was now aware that the true enemy he needed to confront was not hidden in the shadows of the outside world, but in the dark recesses of his own consciousness. Rain fell heavily over the city as the clock ticked down to the end of 72 hours. The tense silence of Logan's office was broken by a sudden notification on his computer. A live feed, no sender, no explanation. With his heart racing, he clicked on the link. The image appeared blurry, shaking. Little by little, the focus revealed something that made his blood freeze. A boy, tied to a chair, crying, his eyes wide with fear. Logan recognized that face immediately. It was his son, the one who believed he had been dead for 5 years, buried, lost forever. But he was there, alive, scared, waiting. Logan's breathing became heavy as he helplessly watched the scene before him. The masked man's voice appeared once again, now coming from the transmission itself. "You want to know the truth, Logan? Look in the mirror." The camera shook and panned slowly until it turned toward another figure in the room. And in that instant, Logan's world fell apart. The man holding the knife, standing behind the boy, was him. Not an imitation, not a mask. It was Logan Harris, his eyes empty, his expression soulless, and his hands covered in blood. The detective stared at the screen as if seeing a stranger, but knew deep down that it was his own truth revealing itself. A dense fog covered his mind as forgotten fragments began to fall into place. Voices, blurred memories, holes in your own narrative. Connor Hale, the man who hunted from the beginning, never existed. Every clue, every threat, every message, they had all been created by himself. A construct of his shattered mind, a manifestation of accumulated guilt, trauma, and madness. His obsession with the truth had led him down a path of shadows so deep that he no longer distinguished what was real from what was imagined. The enemy he feared so much was, from the beginning, an extension of his own collapse. Logan fell to his knees, staring at the monitor's reflection, as if staring into an abyss. And the abyss, inevitably, stared back. Everything made sense now. The personal objects mysteriously appearing, the impossible connections, the voice that haunted him, the emotional manipulation. It wasn't a game created by someone outside. It was his own ruined mind trying to punish him, forcing him to face the crimes he never admitted to. With each step of the investigation, he got closer not to justice, but to the truth. A cruel, inescapable truth. He was the monster. He was the killer. As the screen faded to black and the broadcast came to an end, Logan stood there, motionless, sunk in the brutal reality of who he really was. There was no more escape, no mystery to solve, Just a man broken by his own sins, buried under the lies he told to survive. Outside, the city remained silent, oblivious to the collapse of a detective who spent his life hunting monsters, without realizing that all along, the most dangerous of them lived inside him. Then, like an endless cycle, the phone rang again. The clock resets, and a new phone call starts ringing.